Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest joining us this morning.
Yes, indeed.
She has a new book, The Urgent Life, My Story of Love, Loss, and Survival. I don't want to say your name wrong.
Bozoma.
St. John. Okay. Welcome.
Yes, thank
Just
you.
want to make sure.
I kept telling him you didn't believe me.
No.
Look,
You know why? Because he'll tell me a name, and I say it wrong, and then he'll laugh after.
Oh,
Like, that's what he does.
Okay.
So
It's like a setup.
it is a setup.
It is a
So I had
setup.
to make sure.
All right,
Welcome,
well,
Boz.
thank
How
I
you
appreciate
doing?
it. I'm very well, thank you.
Congratulations on the book.
Ooh, thank you.
And you always smell like prosperity. As
What
soon as
you
you
smell
walk
like
in the room,
money?
you just smell the success. Like, damn,
know
Bo.
what? Thank you, Charlamagne. I appreciate it.
Yes.
So let's talk about The Urgent Life.
Yes.
My
sir.
story of love, loss, and survival. What made you write this book?
Well, I have had a thankfully successful corporate career. And they're always like big headlines, you know, where like I moved to this job and did this thing and the accolades and all kinds of stuff. And I think that, you know, people assume that it's been an easy road and that, you know, I've just like sort of jumped around aimlessly. But the truth of the matter is that, you know, we all go through trauma, we all go through loss, we all go through pivots and things that make us feel uncomfortable. And I wanted to tell what has happened to me.
For people that don't know, give them some of the accolades that you did and some of the careers and jobs that they don't know.
All right. Well, I am inducted into the Marketing Hall of Fame.
Hey.
Okay. Yes.
Drop a bomb for that. All right.
And the Advertising Hall of Achievement. I have been the Chief Marketing Officer of Netflix, the Chief Marketing Officer of Endeavor, the Chief Brand Officer at Uber, the Head of Global Marketing at Apple Music and iTunes, Head of Music and Entertainment Marketing at PepsiCo. So it's
Couple
been,
jobs.
you know what I mean? Number
jobs.
one on Forbes,
Nice.
the most influential CMO in the world. So
Wow.
a few accolades.
So where did you get your start for people that don't know?
Well, in marketing, I got my start with Spike Lee. His advertising agency, Spike TDB, is here in New York, 437 Madison Avenue. And I started as his assistant.
How was an assistant for Spike? How was that? Because he moves around. He's
It's
always
pressure.
working.
It's pressure. It's pressure.
Speaking of an urgent life.
I'm telling
Right.
you. Okay. Yeah. Well, that was even the first place that I saw that you can do a lot of things at one time and still like be locked in. You know, that not just obviously directing, but he's writing, he's a father, he's a friend, he's a professor. You know, he ran an agency, an advertising agency. He was shooting commercials. Like he was doing everything at one time and doing it all very well, focused, you know, not wasting time. So it was
So
a
you're
very
saying
good
you got your
start.
start with Spike and
Yes. And then I went to PepsiCo, where I, you know, rose through the ranks and eventually ran music entertainment marketing there. Most notably, out of a few things I did there, I was on the team that negotiated the deal with the Super Bowl, the NFL for the Super Bowl halftime show and put Beyonce on that stage.
Wow.
So that was pretty dope. And then I went to Beats, which was bought by Apple, and I I helped to form and create Apple Music, and then ran iTunes.
It's amazing.
And I went to Uber, and then man,
That's
it's been a
amazing.
journey.
How do you know when it's time to leave? Because, you know, people always look at Boz as like a hit woman for hire. You know what I mean? You bring her in, she does her thing, and then she's out. Like, how do you know when it's time to leave a situation?
You know, it's a very individual question. You know, it's like I feel like a lot of times we know the things that you're supposed to do. You know what I mean? It's like your intuition, your gut. It tells you a lot of stuff. We don't want to listen. We just want to, you know, use logic and do pro and con lists and say, oh, well, you know what? No, I think it sounds better if I do this instead. Or you ask somebody their opinion. How are they supposed to know? They never lived your life. They've never been in your shoes. They've never had the journey. Maybe you respect them because of where they are, but that has nothing to do with you. And so for me, I've always just listened to my own counsel, you know, and it's like any other muscle. It's like the more you listen to your own intuition, the more you trust it, the more you go with it, even when it doesn't feel like it's the right thing. And you win, it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So now I don't even, look, I walk into a room and know I'm not supposed to be there and walk the hell out without apology. All the energy. Yeah. I could tell right away.
I was going to ask, how difficult is it to get money for our culture?
Oh.
You know, because you talked about so many different brands that, you know, was it, I'm sure it was a lot difficult to get money for urban, R&B, than country and pop, you know?
Very, very difficult. Very difficult. There were so many times that I would be working on a campaign and know that like, well, this is the thing that's going to move the culture, but I didn't have any money to do it. Actually, one big notable one was when I was working at Apple Music. And I did a small little commercial, which became a hit, directed by Ava DuVernay. At that point, she had only directed Selma, obviously other things, but her most successful was Selma. But it was a commercial to show essentially the idea of playlists. Because at the time, it wasn't really something that people knew how to do. You didn't know how to engage. And so we had to show them that, hey, look, it's like a mixtape, you know, but it's streaming. And so it starred Taraji P. Henson, Kerry Washington, and Mary J. Blige.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
I had $3 to make that commercial.
You said $3?
$3, yeah. I went to Ava's office, pitched her the idea, you know, said like, look, I don't have the money because we're using the money on Taylor Swift, which is, you know, like, look, Taylor's big. So, and by the way, the audience for that particular commercial was going to be for women like me. I mean, so literally, I had no money. I had to use a playlist that Carl Cherry, shout out to Carl Cherry, who made for my birthday. Wow. That's the playlist we use on set to film the commercial because we just didn't have any money to do anything else. And I also scraped together some money to play it just one time on air. It was during the Emmys, and it was the first year that 5 Black women were nominated for Emmys, and it was history making. And so I was like, yo, I'm gonna put every dollar that I have for media for this one little commercial, I'm gonna put it on that. And so it aired one time, and the next morning it was everywhere.
I remember.
So it was just, you know,
That's crazy.
We don't have a lot of money for us, but it always hits.
And we celebrate those moments like it's a big accomplishment because it is, but we don't realize behind the scenes, we begging to get that up.
Look,
that going.
I'm telling you. And the thing is that like, but you know what happens is that after you get that hit, then everybody's like, oh, so how do we do that again? You know, give me that, what you just did, do that again. And I'm like, okay, well, how about
for less this time?
Look, okay, do it for $2. You did $3. Oh, $3 is too much, you know. But it's like you do the next thing, or you come with the next thing. You're like, oh, this idea is gonna hit, and people be like, I don't know. Don't you think you should do it with Taraji again? And I'm like, no, it's just a different idea. Or like even when I was at Uber, that was a struggle. That was a tough time. I went just at the height of like delete Uber and like all the challenges they were having. And I met up with Mav Carter and LeBron. They had just started Spring Hill, and were looking for chances to shoot commercials or shoot film. They just wanted to shoot content and prove themselves in Hollywood. And so we worked together to come up with a campaign actually called Riding with the Champion.
Oh, Carrie
Champion. Yes, because, you know, Carrie's my bestie. And so I was like, shoot, give her a little job, you know what I mean? And we put her in the seat as an Uber driver. And she drove around, and he basically interviewed athletes in the back of the car. The point of the commercial at the time was that there wasn't a lot of trust between Uber drivers, passengers, riders, the company. It was just all a mess. And so the idea was like make the car feel like a place where you can tell the things, you know. So we got LeBron in the car driving with Carrie, and she asked him what it's like to be a Black man in America, and that's when he made his statements about Trump and like all of these political opinions. And then the next day,
shut up and dribble.
Right.
You know, and we were actually on air giving an interview to SportsCenter when Laura Ingraham said that. And so immediately was like, oh my God, what do we do? You know, it's like all of these things, and people were attacking. And then I got a call from some folks at Uber, you know, where I was working, who were like, okay, yeah, so we're not into politics. You need to take that commercial off the air. And I'm like, wait, hold on. No. This is good for the culture. Like we're doing the right thing. We're on the right side, you know, but sometimes it's really hard to defend because we know we're on the right side.
Right.
But if you're not a part of the culture, you don't know what that moment is going to mean, which I knew what it was going to be. LeBron said it that day on air. He was like, I'm more than an athlete. And that joint has now permeated everything.
Right. That's right.
So
did Uber ever come back around?
No, I left.
Oh, you left? Was it because of that?
I resigned. Many reasons, but a lot because of that. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, when it comes to marketing, right? Like everything has to be curated correctly, right? But when it comes to your personal life, and you know, when you read the book, you see all of the things that you've dealt with. How do you turn off your marketing mind just to be able to deal with you?
That's a really tough question. Because I don't think that I turn off my mind, you know, in order to be personal. I think maybe that's even part of the story in the book, which is that we really shouldn't do that. You know, it's like you're one person, whether you're in the professional space or the personal space or wherever you are. And I think sometimes we try so hard to keep those things apart, and that's actually what hurts us. You know, so in my book, I talk about the losses I've suffered, you know, the grief, the pain, real pain. And it's like, for a long time, I kept that out of my work. You know, I would, what they say, like, leave the trouble at the door, you know what I mean? And come in and you're trying to pretend everything's all right. Meanwhile, freaking your whole house is burning down, you know? And I think now I have much better integrated, you know, what is happening to me into my work. And work by work, I don't mean just like the fingerprints of the things I create, but my colleagues, you know, because I do think that for us as a society, it's like the more we can be more open and vulnerable and honest about the things that we're doing and what's going on, I think the better connections we make with each other, the more empathy we have for each other, and actually then we're happier. I think we'd be a better society if we're more honest, actually.
When you see some of these dumb commercials, right? Do you ever wonder to yourself, who let that person speak for our culture?
Always, always. I am that person. I'll be at the cocktail party. Don't ever invite me over for dinner or a cocktail party. I will talk about this all day long. You know, I'll be like, did y'all see the commercial where? You know what I mean? Because sometimes
like
it's
the biggest one was like, I think Pepsi and Kendall Jenner.
Oh, Kendall Jenner, I know. Oh, it frustrated me so much. And because I've worked at a lot of places, and because the marketing world is pretty small when you start getting to more senior levels, I know a lot of people, you know? So, you know, I called right over there and the people who made it. Now I'm like, okay, so walk me through how this happened.
Right.
You know what I mean?
What makes you think that was a good idea?
Let me understand. You know what I mean? Because I think sometimes also, and this happens to all of us in our work, sometimes we get really caught up. You think you have a good idea. You think something is really popping. And it's not until it hits outside that all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, hold on. That's not what I meant to do. You know, my intention was.
I always want to know, was there checks and balances, right? So you look at that one, or you look at the Balenciaga with the this thing, like, there's no checks and balances. Nobody's saying that's not a good idea. You know what I mean? You
know, I have to be honest with you. It's very, very hard. It actually is. It's harder than it seems, you know, because, again, sometimes you're so wrapped up in what you're doing that you're not objective. You know, when you are really in it and you're working and you're like, okay, everybody move this direction, things can get missed. Even things that seem so obvious to us. But the thing is that we have the privilege of not being in the heat. You know, you're not in the middle, and it's very difficult to look up at the forest when you're with the trees. You're actually at the root, you know, and then you look up at the sky and you're like, oh, it looks like a nice day. Meanwhile, there's a thunderstorm down the way and you can't see it, you know? So sometimes I give grace for those situations. Oh, but you know, I make a call, always make a call. I'm always like, okay, now here's what we're going to learn from this experience. And I have to say also, it's like, look, the truth of the matter is there's not enough diversity in these rooms. We all know that. But the problem is that, like, and, you know, I'm going to say the things because sometimes we get up in the room and then we don't want to make hires either. We don't want to bring other people with us.
That's right.
We like to be the only one in the room. And so then how are you helping? Because it's like, it can't just be you. You're not all knowing. You're not God.
That's right.
And so even for me, it's like if I enter a corporation, a company, and I'm sitting at the table, it can't just be me. I don't have enough experiences. I don't know what it's like to be a black man, you know? And so it's like, then you need other people. So you need to make hires. You need to advocate for other people to be at the table. It can't just be you. You're not the end all be all. So sometimes I'm looking at the companies like, why y'all not hiring more people of color? And then sometimes I'm looking at people of color there and I'm like, why are you not advocating for more?
I think I know the answer to this, but what has been your toughest life moment to move forward from?
Gosh, that's really tough. I've had so many of them, honestly. But I would say that the one that caused the biggest pivot probably was when my husband passed away. He died of cancer in 2013. He was diagnosed and dead in 6 months. And it was just so unbelievable. I mean, both of us, unfortunately, were not strangers to cancer. Both of our mothers had had cancer, both survivors. My mom was on her second bout of cancer when my husband got diagnosed, actually.
If you don't mind me asking, what type of cancer?
It was Burkitt's lymphoma.
What is that?
It's like a blood cancer. It attacks your lymph nodes. And it was like a strange thing, you know? It's like the doctor said it's like 1 in a million chances or something like that, right? But it was one of those situations where when he was first diagnosed, it was weird because he was one of those guys that like was super healthy. I mean, he'd walk around in the city like wintertime with like a sweater on, you know what I'm saying? Like he wasn't a guy who got sick. And so when he was diagnosed, we were like, okay, what's the plan? You know, what's the radiation? What's the surgery? What's the... And they were like, okay, well, we can try a number of surgeries or we can try a couple of treatments. But within like 2.5 months of the treatments, his oncologist just called us in and was like, look, there's nothing that's going to work.
Wow.
So y'all should prepare. And we were both looking at him like, what do you mean? Like, we don't understand what you mean. Like, there must be something, some treatment, I mean, there was even a specialist who was based out of Texas that we called because I was the only person in the country who understood his kind of cancer. And there was nothing to be done. So it was really that moment that caused me to better understand urgency, you know, because like in my life, I've always been very spontaneous. I've always been very passionate. You know, if like I feel something, I get an idea, I want to go do it right now. I've always been that way. But it wasn't until he was terminally diagnosed that I was just like, you know what, like, I don't want to waste time for sure. I've never been that person, but I have to be more purposeful. I have to be more intentional. You know, it's like, if I want to do this thing, it's like, why do I want to do that thing? And I have to go and do it. You know, it's like, there's no wasting time. I don't want to hear anybody's excuses. I don't want to like, be like, oh, you know what? I just don't have the resources, or I don't have the time, or oh, I can't get to this. No, it's like, yo, you don't have time to waste. And it's not like a morbid thing for me, you know, to think about like, oh, death is around the corner. Like, I'm not thinking that and being fearful. I use it as a motivator. I'm like, yo, look, if I go tomorrow, I am telling you I have loved this life. I have loved every minute of it. And yes, I have big dreams and more aspirations and more goals, but like, man, there's, I have in the book, there's the epitaph at the beginning of the book from an author, Diane Ackerman, who I really love. And when I read the statement, it just like expanded my mind because she says, I'll paraphrase, it's like, she said, I don't want to get to the end of my life and just have lived the length of it. I want to have lived the width of it. And it's just like, it just changed my perspective, you know, because I was thinking like, yeah, don't we all want years and years? You know, you think like, I want to be 90, 100, 120 or something like that. And I'm like, but what if you live that long and you haven't lived the width of it? What if like the energy and the excitement and the things that made life like worth it, like what if you haven't done any of that? And so that's why every day now I'm like, yo, I want to be present. I want to be in the moment. I want to enjoy it. It's like, it doesn't always mean that you have to like climb freaking Everest, you know, but it's like, yo, I'm in this room right now with you and I'm going to enjoy the hell out of it. It's a great time. What a wonderful opportunity. Like, I want to remember this moment.
Yeah, I was wondering that, like, when a person is terminally, you know, diagnosed, do you embrace that aspect of it, or does the grieving process start then as well?
Or do you just want to live life? Like, I want to live this into the fullest until there is no more.
Yeah, it's like all of those things at one time. It's literally everything, and it can switch like minute to minute. You know, grieving for me started the moment I felt the bumps on his head. That's when I knew. You know, I knew something was going on. Because
how did you know though? Like, was it a stomach ache? Was it just like, how did he even know he had cancer? Like, what was the way of even knowing? Right. Well, you said he was healthy and he walked around with no shirt, whatever it was. You know, the
real truth is that like I saw there was a lump on his throat, and it was just like, who gets that? It was just weird, and so I like touched it, and I was like, what is that thing? And he, you know, the man's man, you know, he's like, nothing. He'll probably be gone by tomorrow. I'm gonna drink some beer. I'm like, what?
I'm gonna drink some beer.
What kind of solution?
What kind of remedy is that, right?
You know what I'm saying? It's like, drink some Tussin or something like that. But he went to like our family doctor, basically, and they said, oh, you have tonsillitis. And so it was like, well, okay. He goes, they're like, okay, we'll take the tonsils out. And I'm like, first of all, how'd you even make it to adulthood with the tonsils? Okay, fine. You know, take the tonsils out.
Did he look, or he just looked at him as like tonsillitis? Like,
yeah, they like felt it.
Okay.
They felt it and said it was his tonsils. So, and it was like the tonsils were enlarged. And when they took it out, he said it looked abnormal. And so they sent it in for tests. And then they came back.
That's what they found. Wow.
Yeah, and said, you have cancer.
Wow.
And that was it.
He gave you a list to finish, right?
Yeah.
How much have you checked off of it so far?
Well, this is, man, that's, so he gave me a list. I hate lists. I hate them. I don't like to do lists. I feel like if it's important enough, I'm going to remember to do it. And if I don't remember, then it wasn't important. But he gave me a list. He liked lists. And a bunch of stuff on the list. Big things, small things. We were separated, actually, at the time when he was diagnosed, although we were co-parenting our 4-year-old and very much friends. But we were on the way to divorce. And the top of the list was like, you should cancel the divorce. I'm like, okay, all right, what's next on the list? You know? And it was everything. It's like gelato, go eat some of that. Like, it was like, you know,
you to do that.
Yeah, it was all kind of things. He had all kind of things on the list. And so what started happening was that as we crossed things off on the list, I felt like maybe I could cheat God, cheat death by adding things to the bottom of it.
Wow.
You know, and being like, okay, if there's more to do, then he won't die. Like there's just
so y'all doing it together when he was
yeah. He'd be like, okay, what do we have to do today? And I'd be like, all right, we have to get all your passwords. Give me your phone. You know, like, I want to read your text messages. You know, but I just felt like if I kept adding stuff, that he would never go. But unfortunately, that's not how it works.
That's right.
But since I've still kept the habit. You know, I do now have lists sort of running in my head and on paper on things that I want to accomplish, you know, things I want to get done. Some, like I said, sometimes they're really big things and sometimes it's the little stuff,
right?
You know, and all of it is important. I think maybe that's one of the biggest lessons. It's like I said, it's not always about climbing Mount Everest. Sometimes it's just like, hey, make sure you like look at the sky today.
Absolutely.
You know, or like, oh, it's going to be a full moon. Go sit outside. Look at that. You know, enjoy it. Be peaceful about it.
I was going to ask, I know, you know, she has to go. She has something. I was going to say, what do you want people to get out of this book?
Oh, wow.
I'm sure there's so many different keys and so many different gems,
things.
but what's the main thing you want people to get out of? Because we learned so much in the last 22 minutes here.
I think maybe it's really hope. You know, I think maybe that sounds so corny to say, but it's hope. You know, it's like we live in such a tough world, man. You know, it's like there's so much that happens to us. It's not like, you know, your husband or your wife has to die in order for you to feel something. Like it's like there's all kind of losses and traumas and identity and friendships and expectations. Like things happen to us that disappoint us all the time. And I think for me, one of the things that I want to be known is that none of that has to stop you. You know, it's like, I'm not saying that you don't have to pause and grieve the thing. Do that. For sure do that. But you can't get stuck in the darkness. You know, there's a part I talk about.
Right there.
Yeah,
I tell you got a good therapist.
Look, great therapist, all right, for a long time.
Absolutely.
But the thing that I really think about hope is that sometimes it sounds like such a frou-frou thing. It's like, oh, you have hope. You know, it's like some pastor somewhere standing on a pulpit and telling you. But I think of it kind of like an analogy of like light. You know, when they tell you like, you know, there's a light at the end of the tunnel and you're thinking, okay, I'm in the darkness. Let me just focus on the light. I'm like, nah, man. Have you ever been in a dark room where you had a light down there? Yo, you're afraid to walk from here to over there because you could trip on something. You could stub your toe. You know, you're kind of walking gingerly. You don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, the light is there and you know you can get out. But like, what's between where I'm standing and how do I get there? So for me, I'm like, yo, I need to have the light on me. Like I need to be holding the light. I need to create the light. So that it's like, if you're in a dark place and you're holding the flashlight yourself, guess what you could do? You could point it down at the ground, look around, see what's going on, point it out to see what's coming. Like, it's so much better to be in control of it. So that's what I mean by hope. It's like, look, if you're in a dark place, you gotta create your own light. You know, what's the thing that's gonna pull you out? Don't depend on something external to do it.
Before you go, we have to talk about, because you know, Boz is the queen of Ghana, all right? So tell people why it's so important that Black Americans in Ghana build this bridge.
And then ask Charlamagne well, I'm sure you probably know already, but you know Charlamagne's favorite place.
I don't know if I know his favorite place.
The Silver Fox in Ghana.
Oh my God!
but I'll tell you something.
Know, I'm not mad at that though.
You're not mad at that?
I'm not mad.
He's been talking about the Silver Fox for months.
No, it is a special place.
Silver Fox is special, but I tell you something else. Boz had us on a very special place for New Year's Eve in Ghana.
Oh yes,
Treasure Island.
Yes, Treasure Island. Man. Oh man, I'm telling you, Treasure Island. I feel like everybody should go to Ghana and everybody should go to Treasure Island.
I agree.
And the reason why it's important, you know, for me, I feel very bicultural, right? My parents are Ghanaian. I was born in the U.S., so I'm first generation American, but I go back and forth all the time. But it wasn't until I was like in my late 20s that I started going like on my own for my own reasons and not just to visit cousins and uncles and stuff. And what I found was that, you know, we're not, we don't have our roots unless you go to the continent. Like it's really a real thing. And when I met the president of Ghana in 2017, he said something at the UN General Assembly that really changed my perspective. In his speech, he was talking about marking 2019 as a year of return, which would be 400 years since the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade. And he wanted to make a call to action for everybody of African descent anywhere in the world to return to the continent. Not necessarily to live, but he was like, yo, come and just feel the continent. And what he said during that speech, which changed everything for me, is he said that until the continent of Africa is respected, no person of African descent anywhere will be respected. And I was like, yo, it just opened my mind, because I remember being 12 years old in Colorado Springs, Colorado, which is where I grew up, and seeing those commercials on TV of the African kids with the distended bellies and the flies on their eyes. And, you know, kids, I would go to their house and they would have the picture of the African kid on the fridge, and it would say 1 cent, you know, 1 cent a day.
Feeds a kid or something like that. Feeds in it,
But like, if you think about it as an adult, like what's happening is that you're conditioning people to assign that black face with 1 cent. They are less than you. They don't mean anything. And think about, the funny thing is that sometimes we think, oh, there's such a big difference. Oh, you're here, you're American, you're black. But like, are you much different from the kid on the fridge? No, you're not. When you're walking out on the street, you're not. So your life is of less value. Your life is worth 1 cent. And every adult who's walking around the planet, who's walking around the United States of America, remembers that. They know that. Whether or not they acknowledge it, whether or not they're police or they're your boss or they're who, they know that you are worth 1 cent. You are less. You are less than them. And so when he said that, it just opened up a floodgate for me, and I was like, oh man, we got to change the narrative. And as a marketer, look, I've done it for all the big companies in the world. I'm like, I need to use my talent to market and change the narrative for Africa. And so while he was, you know, talking the big talk of politics and policy and all that, I was like, yo, I know how to get people excited. That's right. It's a turn up. It's the Silver Foxes. It's the like Treasure Island. You know, it's the like, you know, the restaurants and the fashion and the music. Come on, the music. It's like all of that stuff is what makes the continent hot. And it's like, if you respect it, if you think that like the hottest things are coming out of Africa, you're going to respect it more. That's right. And it has to start with us. And that's why I think it's important for black people everywhere. And I don't care about this separation of like, oh, these people think this of us and that. I don't care. Stop that. Like, you got to go to the continent, celebrate the continent, and your life will be different for it.
Absolutely. Well, Boz, we appreciate you for joining us. The Urgent Life, my story of love, loss, and survival.
Go pick it up now.
Make sure you pick it up now, and thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It was nice to meet you. When are you coming to Silver Fox?
Soon, hopefully soon.
I'm going back this year.
He might be going back tomorrow. He's waiting.
Look, Treasure Island is amazing.
We're going to do Treasure Island again.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, we there.
2023, baby. Let's go.
Treasure Island is a resort.
Yeah.
And it's wild because it's just like, it's just beautiful island in the middle of Ghana. Where is it? It's not in Ghana. It's not in Ghana, actually.
It's in Ghana, but it's about an hour and a half outside of the capital. Okay. But you can take a boat. Now you can fly there. You can take a helicopter. But it is gorgeous because there's like, it's like a, you know, utopia. Did you see the camels when you were there?
I saw the camels.
I
saw the rabbits.
Oh, look, lots of rabbits.
Lots of rabbits.
But it's like everything. There's everything going on there. Okay. So it's gorgeous. So come visit.
Well, it's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.
Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.